So for step 21, attaching the pinion gear. Well, you can see here, and there isn't a guide or something that you can use to help with this. You are going to have to measure that distance yourself. But you'll notice that there are two pinion choices, which they offer, and then of course we need our grub screw. Well, there's a 15 tooth and an 18 tooth. Now I've decided that I'm going to go with the 18 tooth pinion for this because it'll make the car go faster. So as we're not changing the spur gear, the difference is this. The 15 tooth, being a smaller pinion, will give you more torque. The 18 tooth, being a larger pinion, more teeth, will give you more speed. The only other adjustment would be if we had a different spur gear that we could change, but we can't on this car, or at least under the stock configuration. So you have just the choice of more torque or more speed. So I'm going to go with the more speed option. So I'm going to put that one back in the bag. So we'll set this up and we'll put the pinion gear on the motor. So first off, let's get this rubber boot off, and the easiest way to do that is to just grab some needle nose pliers, hold it firm, and pull it off. Easy peasy. So then once we've got that done, next thing to do is work on this grub screw. Now what I find, which I like to do, is I will grab the Allen key, put the grub screw on there, and get this whole thing started so that I don't have to be trying to mess about with this on the motor shaft. So if I just take it far enough that I can see that it's going through, which it is, so I'll just back it off a touch. We now have that grub screw on there. You're going to need to find the flat spot on the motor shaft, because you can see it's mostly curved, except the flat is where you want that grub screw to grab. And I'm going to put it on enough that it can't go around the shaft, if that makes sense. So I can turn the motor shaft itself because the grub screw is down enough that it's still sitting nice on that flat. So what do we need to do? Well, it's saying that we need this to be 16 millimeters, and it's 16 millimeters from the base of the motor to the end of the pinion. So I'm just going to put that back in there for a second. What I'm looking for here is that 16 millimeters. So if we look at the edging of this, 16, I pull this closer, 16 would be about there. That would be 16. So if I know that and I try and hold that into position, and it's already moved, so I want to tighten this in just a bit more. Let's try this again. I want 16 millimeters. That would be there, so you can see the marking. So we're at 16 millimeters. I'll twist and just make sure that that is correct. So yeah, we're still at the 16 millimeters, and this is on enough because I was twisting it. Now you can see that I've got the long end. Well, you want to be able to put that on with a fair bit of force. You need a bit more torque. So now I'm going to turn this to the other end, put that back into the grub screw, and now I'm going to twist. And I'm just going to tighten this up. Now it's it's feeling good, but now that it's even tighter, I'm going to do one last check to see where we're at. And that is still at the 16 millimeter. So I can definitely put that back in and start pulling back. And again, with this, I definitely do like to tighten it quite a lot, just so that we don't have this grub screw come out or the pinion slide off in use. And now that's on nice and tight and firmly on the flat spot of the motor mount. Now what's interesting about this kit is you'll notice they don't have a motor plate. There isn't a motor plate, and in most kits they put a motor plate on before we attach the pinion, but this one doesn't have it. But there we go. There is our pinion on the motor. So that means that step 21 is complete. So now we're going to move on to step 22, and we're going to attach the motor to the chassis. So for step 22, attaching the motor, well, we're going to grab the motor that we just finished putting the pinion on, and we're going to slide this through, and then we've got these two screws and these two screws to put in. And you can see there are the tapping screws, there are the larger BB1 screws that are going to attach the motor. And because we use the 18 tooth pinion, you can see that they're showing you more or less the placement of the pinion before you screw it all down and tighten it up. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. So I'll set it all up and we'll put it on. So let's grab the chassis. And then you can see that in terms of the motor, they're showing you that this is facing upwards. Now, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, but I tend to like to do it the way that they show it. So I am going to put it on that way. There is a caution sticker. I am going to put it on. I like doing that, whether we need it or not. But I'm going to put that on afterwards so that I can get the placement right. So initially, let's see how this is going to go. Because if I move those wires out of the way for now, because we don't need them at the moment. We are going to need to put that into there. And we're going to need to figure out how that is going to sit on the spur gear inside. And it's looking like you can see, if you can see in there, the pinion is pretty much nicely level with the edge of the spur on this side. So now it's just going to be a matter of just making sure that where we place this, it actually is sitting correct. So if I just pull this back out again, you can see that we need, and if we look at this, it's that bottom hole, but the second one in. So you can see that on the bottom, there was a high and a low. So high is the 18 tooth pinion that we used, and you can see pinion, high 18 tooth, low 15 tooth. So if we know that that's the high, we know that this screw has to go into there. Otherwise, we would use the one that was up here with the L. So we know that we want that one right there. So knowing that, let's grab our motor again. And we know that there's the screw hole that that's got to go into. So let's make sure that we get that into there. So I'm just going to try and match where that's going. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to screw that one down a bit. Make sure that that's going into the motor, which it is. So now we can screw in the other one, which is basically matching it at this side. which should now fit into the top hole of the motor. So let's see if that is matching. Yep. Or no. We just got to find that sweet spot. No, it's going in. That was the right one. So I'm going to tighten it up, but you can see that because we're using the 18 tooth, so we have to put in the screw in this side, it's actually matching itself to the spur perfectly. And if we'd used the 15 tooth, we would have matched it to the one up here by the L. If you can see that, I'll see if I can turn that a bit. There's an L back there, and it would have matched in on the other side. So let's just continue to screw this down because it's exactly where it needs to be. So I am going to tighten this up, but I don't want to over tighten it because that is the, you're still going from plastic to the metal of the motor, but I don't want it to over tighten anything with the gearbox either. But to my mind, everything is looking pretty good in there. So what do we have left? Well, we've got these two tapping screws, and we now put on this cover. So the cover is going to sit over top like that, and we've got a tapping screw on the bottom. So I'll just start that for now. It's going in okay. And I'll tilt this back down. Maybe I can use the magnetism, yes. And we'll do the same thing there. And we're going to screw this all the way in. Which is down. And it looks like that's fine too. So I'm going to turn this around. And we're going to do the bottom here. It's easier doing it this way. And again, don't over tighten. It is tapping screws, but I think it actually goes in pretty smooth, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But the nice thing is, obviously this is done so that if you decide to change out the pinion gear, it's already telling you the setting. So you know that you'll just pull this off and then put the screws into the different position if you were going to use the low position. So low being torque, high being speed, and we set this up for speed. So that's very cool. Our motor is in place. Now, obviously the next thing we need to do is connect everything. So if you remember, we've got our cables coming out of this box now. These cables actually can now be pushed back, and I'm going to have them inside of the roll cage. They'll be nicely out of the way, and we're going to have to attach those. Now I have to remember which one was which. I believe it's going to be yellow to yellow, but I gotta check, so I'm going to quickly do that and I'll come back. So I was correct, it is yellow to yellow, and because of the way I did this where the ESC is in the box, I've actually already connected those wires and they're sitting there just like that. It's actually quite clean looking. So I'm happy with how that has turned out. Everything's out of the way. So the last thing we have to do, and I've got to do it, is put on that sticker. So I'm going to grab this. It was C. Peel that off. And let's put it right there. More or less. Yes. So there we go. There's our caution hot sticker. Oh well. But I just think that looks awesome. So I'm happy with that. So now we have our motor attached to the chassis. So we're finished with step 22. So we're going to move on to step 23, and we're now going to work on the rear dampers.